Live on WFLA Now. This is Run for Fun with running enthusiast Leigh Spann.
All right, let's go. Welcome back to the Stream Center for this week's episode of Run for Fun. This show focuses on ways to set yourself up for a healthy relationship with running, because obviously the goal is to run for decades. And you can't do that if you're pushing yourself too hard all the time or not fueling yourself properly. It's really a delicate balance to stay consistent. And we try to help you with that balance. So I'm your host, Leigh Spann. I'm a meteorologist at WFLA in Tampa. But it's hard to believe I've been running now consistently for more than 14 years. I'm lucky that I was able to find people who helped guide me along the way so that I can stay in sort of that healthy balance with my running. And the person really who keeps me in that balance is Coach Maria. Hey, Coach, how are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you. How are you?
I am great. So our topic today is transitioning from summer to fall. And you had a fall experience. You got to go up and watch some college football this weekend.
Yeah, and the weather there was unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, it was 40 degrees in the morning, which I just haven't seen that. I was telling everybody up there, I'm like, we were in Blacksburg, and I'm like, I haven't seen 40 in probably, 6 or 7 months?
Maybe even more than
I
that.
haven't even seen 60.
Yeah.
So,
how quickly, this time of the year where we in Florida are still firmly in summer for like another month.
Yes.
Other places are starting to really taste their fall. So it's
and it was a nice break. I ran 10 miles on Saturday, and even in the hills, because there's some crazy hills up there, it felt magnificent. And so it's coming, guys. I really hope you guys stick to it and know that it's coming.
Well, toward the end of our summer, right about mid-October, of course, I'm inviting everybody to come out to the Leigh Spann Farewell 5K, Run for Fun. It's, as I made the announcement last week that we will be, I'm going to be moving up to Ohio with my husband. And so the station has been very nice to host this 5K. Any money over what it costs to run the race will go to the Humane Society of Tampa Bay. It's Sunday, October 20th. It starts at 8 a.m. at Al Lopez Park. And it's a 5K. It's mostly shaded. If you don't want to run, you can walk. But it's mainly just a time for me to get to meet a lot of the people who have watched me over 17 years here. Because if people didn't watch me, they would have gotten rid of me a long time ago. So I certainly appreciate all the people who've been loyal watchers. And now I get to come and meet most of them, or a lot of them, face to face.
Yeah, and I'll be there, and my fantastic husband will be there as well. So we'll be there running and cheering, and it'll be a fun time.
Yes, I am definitely looking forward to it. But that would be about the first weekend when we would traditionally have some cooler weather. We typically.
Is that why you picked this weekend, Leigh?
There was actually multiple reasons why. Because some of my friends are out of town. They're like, "Ugh, you didn't check with me first." And I said, "Okay, first of all, I had 2 people I had to check with. First of all, Al Lopez Park.
Yeah.
And second of all, Raymond James, because they don't let you rent out Al Lopez Park on home Buccaneers games. So we had to wait until the Buccaneers schedule came out and then pick a week where they were not at Raymond James. So unfortunately it limited the number of times, but this really works out well. A lot of times what we'll say is we get the first cold front in the Tampa Bay area about the second week of October. Now it's been earlier, it's been later, but on average it's that second week where you really see the big drop in humidity. Even if it's not that much cooler, there's a fall feel to the air. So I'm hoping that coincides with the Run for Fun Leigh Spann Farewell 5K.
Yeah. And if you've been training all summer and it does happen to be a cold front that weekend, that's the one where you go and try and set that PR, because we do have more blood plasma for 2 weeks, 2 whole weeks after the summer. So, I mean, it has to be cold for 2 weeks to lose it. So, and that won't be for a while. So you have, a couple of, probably 2 months of, really tapping into that extra fitness that you got over the summer.
And that's basically what the topic is for this episode, is because, it's a long, hot summer, and we've all been slogging through our miles, and we've been trying to keep our fitness up, slowing down, not running as many miles, running as much speed. So we're really going to transition out of that in the next month. So you got to go ahead and set those goals for how you're going to utilize all of the fitness, right?
Yeah. And the biggest thing I see that I think is the biggest challenge coming off the summer is that a lot of my clients, especially, they lose their confidence over the summer. And frankly, that's pretty dangerous when you're going into a race because we need confidence to be able to hit those numbers we want to hit in the fall. And it's really hard to do when you can't hit the number all summer. A lot of people struggle if you're like, going for a specific goal time, especially in a marathon, and you're close to your ceiling, your current ceiling, it's very difficult to hit marathon pace in the summer in Florida. If you're not close to that ceiling, yeah, you can hit that pace relatively easy. But for most people, marathon pace in 78 to 81 dew point it feels very hard. And you can really think about yourself, you can question your ability to be able to do it for 26 miles because it's so hard to do it in the summer.
And you really do, I always say, like, when people say, oh, running hills is so hard, and I said, but you can tell that you're running up a hill. That you can be like, I conquered that hill.
For sure.
Meanwhile, when you're running, even, super flat here in Florida, here in Tampa, but the humidity, you start to question, like, am I just a bad runner? Like, why is this so hard?
Yes.
And, and it goes on for months and it goes on for months. So you're not tackling a hill. You're just literally trying to go forward. And that, again, can come October, when you've been feeling this way for 4 months, 5 months, it can knock your confidence down.
Yeah. And the hard part is, I say this all the time, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. Mm-hmm. And people love to train the miles, and they'll even train the nutrition, and they'll train all the other aspects, but they leave off that mental part. And it's kind of hard to run well when you leave off the mental part, because in the summer, you really need to trust your training. You need to trust your training. You need to trust your ability, more so than other people do, because you just can't, you can't go out there and, like, you're not going to be able to run a marathon in 81 dew point. That's the same marathon you can run in 45 dew point. So I'm not sure why we even expect that, but a lot of times we do. We train all summer, and especially with the marathon distance, because we train so hard all summer and we're so, fit by the time we get to the race, but we don't feel fit because it's like,
we do not.
I am running a minute slower per mile than I normally do. I can't hit my marathon pace. How am I going to do it for 26 miles? And to me, it's so simple, because I'm like, well, you wouldn't be able to hit that pace if your marathon was 78 dew point either. So it seems logical to me. I'm very logical, but it's not logical to a lot of people. And so a lot of people think they can't do it. And if they think they can't, then they're right. That's really going to affect your race. So you've got to figure out a way. I've had some clients like one of my clients was just in California, and he said it was the best time he had spent, because he said, give me a bunch of pace runs. And I gave him a bunch of pace runs so that I could build his confidence while he was in California in a lower dew point, because he's running Chicago and he needs that confidence to be able to hit his goals in October. And he kept sending me messages. I'm going to live here forever. I'm going to live because he'd been having these awful cramps on his long run, and he hadn't been able to hit pace, and he'd been having stomach issues, and he was really just questioning everything. And then he went to California and he had a great week. So that's a good way to do it. If you have a fall goal, try to get away like I did this weekend, and I ran 10 miles relatively easy, feeling a lot easier in better weather. That can build your confidence a little bit.
Right. And I'm going to go back, because you were saying, like, you wouldn't be able to run your marathon at your same pace at 81 dew point. So again, thinking logically, then your marathon pace in 80-degree dew points is this, but know that same translates to a marathon pace much faster in the cooler. I mean, it's the same marathon pace. You're still putting the same effort in.
It's the same effort.
The effort gets bigger rewards.
And that's why I tend in the summer to really focus on effort. And really, effort is the gold standard. People think, well, coach, you used to give me paces all the time. How come you don't give me paces? I'm like, you want to graduate to effort, because effort, if you're using effort, you're never going to be wrong. You're never going to be wrong, no matter what the conditions are. You can actually not know the conditions out out there, which I never suggest doing, but you could not know the conditions and you can get on the start line on a race and say, this is how a 10K pace should feel like. This is what a 5K pace should feel like. This is what half marathon pace should feel like. This is what marathon pace should feel like. And that's going to be different in every weather. But the effort is never different. So you should be able to do that. The better you get at running, the more ability you have in lots of different climates and lots of different weathers. And we do have a lot of different weather in Florida. So we have that advantage. You can make less mistakes by effort than you can by pace. If you go try to hit a pace that your body's not quite ready to hit yet,
or the weather's
you
not.
can be in really great shape and you can bomb your race, and it could have nothing to do with your fitness level other than you just went out too fast. So, and while we're talking about going out too fast, if you do have a race in the fall, you have all this blood plasma that you build over the summer. It's very easy when you go up to a marathon to go out too fast because now you're rested. Now it's 45 degrees or 55 degrees and you're carbo loaded and you get on the start line and you're like, what? I'm Superman. And you just go out too fast and you can still bomb your race. So still stick to that effort and hold yourself back in the race because you can really mess that up just because you feel a lot better than you have been feeling.
Yeah. And I do like your suggestion of, somewhere in this summer training to get a break from, see what it feels like to go somewhere else so that your body goes, okay, yes, get that confidence, but also so you don't go out too fast. You're like, okay, 10 miles still was 10 miles, even though it felt better. It was, it's still an effort to run. And so when you're tackling 26, it'll make that start line a little bit less of a jolt to you.
Yeah. And when I look at dew point, which I love to do.
I do too.
Everybody is, I do too. See what I did there?
I did. I do.
Oh, we're such dorks. But anyway, I think that when you're talking about dew point, logically, 71 dew point this time of year feels amazing to us. But 71 dew point in May feels awful.
Yeah.
So that should show you how much you've improved your blood plasma over time. Because if we got like a couple weeks ago, we had that 68 dew point and everybody on my, that was it's so funny because everybody's like, I feel so great. I'm in such good fitness. Blah, blah, blah. But nobody mentions the dew point. Nobody's like, oh, the dew point was great today. So my run was good. They're like, oh, I'm just physically fit.
Which is also
true. It is also true. But I'm like, if you could just correlate the dew point with how you feel, then it will help you know why you have a bad run when it's 78 or 81. And then you're not questioning your fitness as much.
But it does, it does start to weigh on you. I mean,
it sure does after, I've said it before. I lived in Memphis and Memphis is very hot in the summer, but it's a shorter period of time. And it also can be cooler on some mornings in Memphis. We just don't get that here. We don't get any mornings that are cooler, especially in Tampa. In Jacksonville, it's slightly better because there's a breeze. Yeah. And I've noticed a huge
little bit
difference.
Farther north. So you get to the cold fronts like 2 3 weeks before us.
And we have a constant breeze.
Yeah.
I feel like in Tampa, it's just sticky and the air doesn't move.
Yeah. We had a little bit of a breeze today, and I had Chris Martinez, one of the co-anchor, was like, it felt better today. I'm like, well, everything else was the same except the air was moving a little bit.
It does help. It definitely helps.
All right, so let me just kind of go through looking at temperatures for us in the Tampa area. That unfortunately, September is not the beginning of our fall. So if you look at September 1st, the average high is 91 and the average low is 76. And you go through the middle of September, it's not that much different. 90 is the average high in the afternoon, which means you can still get much higher than that on some days. And then the average low is still 76. So you're still not even getting that break in the morning. The last day of September, that average high comes down to 89. But again, that's an average, which means there are days in the mid 90s still. And the average low is still 74. So don't think about, enjoy your spiced pumpkin spice lattes, because September for us is still full summer. As I said, we normally get that first cold front about the second week of October. And October is when we see the difference. So we're going from an October average high of 89, which again can still be in the 90s, to by October 31st and Halloween, now we're starting, the average high is 82. So there is there is cooler air coming, but we need to take advantage of what we have built over these last 6 months, right?
Absolutely. And actually, I'm going to give you a little positive spin on that too. When it says 74 low, you and I both know that the dew point can never be higher than the temperature.
Right.
So 74, it has to be either 74 or less.
Yeah.
So 74 dew point is going to feel better than the last, 3 or 4 weeks of, high 76, 77, 78 dew point. So it will feel a little tiny bit better. And then the other cool part about that is a lot of the fall marathons, you'll still go into the fall marathons with blood plasma because we don't have 2 weeks of getting used to anything in October. We're still staying strong. So even if you go up, because I use Chicago Marathon a lot as an example because it's pretty 50-50 now. It can be hot or it can be cold. We have a direct advantage being down here because it's never going to be 78 dew point in October. So even if, and in fact, I'm pretty sure I've never seen a 78 dew point marathon that they didn't cancel. They've had,
except maybe in Miami.
Yeah, Miami, they probably wouldn't cancel it. But most marathons, they won't run them over 74 dew point typically.
And that's
they'll
very
black
smart
flag it.
because
People just, especially up north, they won't do it. I know up north, they have a hard time going above 70 for a marathon. So we are far more prepared than everybody else. And so even if you get a warm Chicago and it's not PR weather, you're still going to run better than anybody else there that's not from Florida or Texas or any of the, Alabama, southern states. So take the advantage. That's the cool part of Florida. We know what to do in this weather. We know how to hydrate. We know how to fuel. We know how to, and we just built more blood plasma. So we're kind of lucky.
Yeah. And you talk about it being the poor man's altitude, because even when we talk to, Meb, who is a silver medalist marathoner in the Olympics, they go to, higher elevation so that the oxygen is less and they build their blood plasma that way. Well, for those of us who can't just pick up and move for 6 months out of the year, like we build it up kind of the hard way. By having to get out and slog through miles when it feels bad. It makes you feel bad about your running.
Yeah. The thing that we have to be careful of is that overtraining element, because we can easily overtrain. And especially like with New York, I've had a lot of people be like, I need to run hills. And I'm like, guys, hills plus humidity is going to annihilate you in going into a race season. So you have to be careful how much stress, because we have to be able to adapt to the stress of training in order to improve. You can't just throw stress on yourself and expect yourself to improve without the proper recovery and rest. And we don't have the ability to be in recovery clinics all the time and have somebody cook for us and take naps and all that stuff. We don't have that ability. So we have to be really careful about what kind of stressors we put on our body. And humidity is a huge stressor for the body. So I would argue, and I think I did 700 feet of elevation gain on Saturday in my 10-mile run, which is not actually that much, but it feels like a lot when you're running on flat. I had zero trouble running those hills just because I've been running in humidity all summer. It was funny because I haven't spent a full summer in Florida in a long time. And I spent the whole summer here. And it was funny when I got up there, it was 60 during the run and I was freezing. Yeah. I was literally freezing for the first 5 minutes. I'm like, whoa. And Luke's like, this is not like you. You usually, I'm like, I know, but I'm just so used to the summer now. It just changed my blood.
Yeah. Because when you do over the past couple of years, you've been going to Maine for at least a month, if not more, in the hottest part of the summer. And then you come out, we would remark when you would come back in August, and your kids would go back to school, it was really hard on you to get
Yeah, I
to,
really do not recommend
to jump
that.
right back into like the worst of it while we've all been building
Yeah.
up that blood plasma. So
Guys build up,
yeah.
easily. And then I have to like really, I go from when I usually leave, it's like in this high 60s dew point. And then when I come back, it's 75, 76. And I'm like, holy cow. It's quite the transition, but I think it's cool that our bodies can adapt like that and they can do so much as long as we can stay positive about it. The biggest thing to do is stay positive about that humidity. The complaining is never going to help you. It's never going to help you because you can't change it. So I would suggest not complaining about it. I would also suggest that you kind of take that spin and say, "Oh, I'm improving. I'm improving." And then the other part to it is, I've had a client that she just kind of raced all summer. And we just had different goals for each race, none of which were getting a PR. She just wanted to challenge herself in different environments and different conditions on different days and different dew points
But short races.
Yeah, I would never suggest anything more than a 3 or 4 miler.
Yeah.
But she had a great summer, and it improved her. I think it's going to really improve her mental game on race day because it's so much harder to race in the heat, and it feels so much worse that when you get into nicer weather, you're like, oh, this doesn't hurt as bad. I can push harder.
Right.
It just makes you a little tougher. So there are some ways to handle the summer that are better than others. If you're a person that doesn't do well in heat, which
me.
Yeah, and me too. I have Eastern European blood. I am not good in heat. I have chosen now at this point in my running career to not run fall marathons. I have done it for years. I did a fall marathon for pretty much 12 years in a row since I've been in Florida. And it's just beat up my body to the point where I'm not willing to do it anymore because it's not fun. And we're running for fun. I'm not getting paid to run. So now I choose, if I'm going to do a marathon, for a marathon to be in May, or April or June or something where I can actually run and feel good. If you're one of those people that just can't get over it, don't sign up for a fall marathon. It's not going to help you run for fun.
Because those, then you're doing 20 milers in August, September. Yep. And, you can, but that if that's going to break down your confidence, make it feel not fun anymore. Yeah. It's great to train through December, January, February, March. Like that's the best we're going to get.
Yeah. And, Steve Magnus had that post a while back about humidity. And it was so funny because he said he tells his elite athletes to run 9-minute pace. And some of my runners were like, 9-minute pace? That's so fast. I'm like,
well,
they're elite athletes. That means their marathon pace is like 5 minutes to 5:20. So think about that in terms of percentage for us. Yeah. That would be like us running 13-minute pace. Really.
Which is actually kind of hard to do to keep.
Yeah, that's hard to do. I myself, I can do it if I need to, but it's not very fun for me to do. So I don't do it. He also said that you should split up some of your long runs in the summer. Now, there are total ways to do that. You can do 10 miles in the morning and 10 miles at night for a 20 miler instead of your 20 miler. But the funny part to that is, again, you have to have the confidence to be able to do that, because you have to have the confidence to say that the long run doesn't matter, which the long run doesn't matter as much as people think it does. But
it feels so important.
It feels so important. And you have to be able to set that aside in order to do a fall marathon and know that you're okay and say, hey, this is just how I have to do this for marathon training. And you have to trust that you're going to be okay. That's tough to do. I realize that that's tough to do. So, we kind of got to combat that in any way we can. I suggest looking at your whole year and setting yourself up for the most success that you can. If you're somebody that is a negative person, which there are people that are negative, don't set yourself up for failure by trying to push through something that you can't turn around. That's only going to make things worse. So try to know your personality, try to set up your year to be successful. And then maybe once you've built the confidence that you need, then maybe you can do a fall marathon or something like that. Or just try to set yourself up for success by knowing who you are and knowing what you can handle. Don't push through things that your personality can't handle, that you're not going to win. Unless you're willing to change your mindset, which very hard.
And maybe not a bad thing, but it's
no,
something that
you're
going to work on over time. And that's what, when I first started this episode, it's like, it's a delicate balance to be able to stay in this healthy, consistent, where I'm not overtraining and I'm not, but I'm not frustrated and I'm still running for fun and I'm trying to do all these races and which race I'm going to do and I'm going to train for that. There are times when it can feel, so overwhelming, but that's when you have to reevaluate. So that's kind of what it's
and
like. That balance is
right?
Very difficult. Yeah.
And it's okay. Just because your friends are doing it doesn't mean you have to do it. I mean, that's the one thing, that your goals are very personal to you. And the goals of your fall races are very personal to you. We've talked about this before. You don't have to tell people what your goals are. You don't have to. Or if you do tell them, tell your coach or tell your, I have clients that have specific goals that they've told nobody but me. And that's fine too. You could tell people that are supportive, tell people that are going to help you achieve them, or keep it to yourself. Be your biggest cheerleader. You be the one that sets the goal. Don't get talked into things. And in the same way, don't talk other people into things, because it's not, this is a huge commitment. Running is a huge commitment in the summer. And if you have to be willing to do it, and you have to be willing to handle the fact that most runs are going to feel like absolute crap. They're going to feel horrible. Like, I'm always so surprised when people are like, 16 miles today felt horrible. I'm like, why do you expect it to feel good? It shouldn't.
And you talk about that all the time. If you tell yourself, okay, there's an 80-degree dew point, I have 16 miles, it's going to be slow, it's going to be hard. You tell your brain how terrible it's going to be, and then it's never going to be as bad as what you have built it up. So you don't go in thinking, this 16 miles is going to go by so fast in July, because it's not. It's not.
And it's expectations, right? Like, I haven't run long all summer because that's not my goal. But a couple weeks ago, Luke was like, we should run 8 miles. I said, okay. And he had this like anxiety. My husband does not get anxiety, but he woke up in the morning and he was just like, I don't know if I can do this. And I'm like, hello, Luke. Like, my laid back husband is worried about running 8 miles. That's weird. He's like, we just haven't done it in so long. I don't know if I can do it. It's so hot. Well, we got with this group of runners, which was a different group than we normally run within our same group. And they said at the beginning, we're going to do a 3-1. We're going to run 3, walk 1. And I'm like, I've never done that.
Yeah.
I just don't do that. Sometimes on like a recovery run, I will run walk if it's really, really hot and I just don't feel like doing it. But typically I just run. And Luke looked at me like, oh, we're doing this today. And I was like, okay, we're doing it.
And that's
we had one of the best runs I can remember. It was so fun because it was different. We were with different people. I didn't feel beat up at all. And I looked at my heart rate at the end and it was very steady and very zone 2E, which I love.
Yeah.
And I was like, why haven't I done this before?
Right.
And it's mostly because of expectations. We're like, okay, well, I've never had to do this before. But just because you haven't had to do it before doesn't mean you shouldn't try it. There's nothing wrong with doing intervals if it's going to make you get through your run and feel like a stronger human at the end. It's not going to hurt you to run some intervals. So just take that into consideration.
So now that we have all this, like, what kind of goals should we be setting? Like, should we be thinking about the whole year? Should we be, just thinking about the fall? What should we be doing right now to help us through the last few weeks of this?
Well, for us in Florida, our race season is pretty much October through March. And I guess that's pretty much the South. In the Northeast, it's pretty much March through October, and then they're done. So we're opposite. So
Right.
if you're in the Northeast, yours are going to look a lot different than ours look. But I like to set it up in a couple ways. In the summer, you can do one of two things. If you really want to gain fitness and you want to build that aerobic capacity bank in the summer, which is really great if you want to have a fall race season that's strong, you can do it one of two ways. You can either just run a boatload of slow, easy miles, throw in some hills, throw in some tempo. Try to stay away from the really hard speed work. You don't need to do that. Just easy, some marathon tempo stuff that's not going to beat you up. Hill workouts, great. If you don't like to slog through the long miles, another great thing to do is switch to the triathlon. You can do some biking, do some swimming, do less running, and you're still building that aerobic capacity bank and you're getting a break from the miles all the time. And it's a really, really great. I used to do that in Memphis. As soon as it got hard and really hard to run in May, we would switch to biking and swimming more. And then we'd come back in August and start running more. That's a great way to set yourself up for a good fall race season, is to build that aerobic capacity bank. And then when the weather starts to get better, then get back out on the track and start hitting some of those intervals that you can easily hit to prepare your legs for the turnover it needs and build that confidence, and then jump into some races. Race season is not the time to be building fitness, I don't think, because we have such a short race season. You can build some fitness in it, but if you're racing as much as we like to race, just go race. Weight training is really good to do in the summer. That's building strength in your legs. That's going to help you with race season. But when you're in race season, you need to back off of that. Everything should be a season, right? So when you're racing, you're concentrating on racing and resting. Race, rest, race, rest. And when you're building, you're concentrating on adding stress and gaining recovery, gaining fitness, right? Those two things don't go together.
Interesting. Yeah. Because I mean, that's, you think while you're building, especially if you're going for a spring race, that you're building up to the miles, but you're saying that we built that fitness already this summer and we can just continue on through the fall.
Yeah. The racing season will keep your fitness. It's not really a time to build fitness. You're building fitness when you're building your aerobic. You think about it like an aerobic capacity bank account. You're putting all this money in the bank, and now you're going to go to race season. You're going to spend it all, right? But then when you're done race season, guess what you got to do? You got to build the bank account back up. So that's a lot of things that a lot of mistakes I see are people just constantly racing all year round and never stepping back and putting some fitness back into the aerobic capacity bank with those longer runs, those tempo runs, the strength workouts and that kind of stuff. That's where you really, it's the bread and butter of your training that's really not that fun to do, because it's not fancy or glamorous and we can't brag about it on Strava. So it's not, although you can brag about miles on Strava. A lot of people will throw down some big numbers in the summer on, miles they do each week. So you can find something to brag about if that's your jam. But
and everyone, assuming that everyone lives around you and is following you on Strava, they're dealing with the same conditions. So either they are breaking themselves down too much, or they know exactly we're all slow and it's fine.
And I hate to use that word balance, but it really is about that. Like, it really is finding that balance that's going to keep it fun. I do think there's a misnomer that people think that running is a sport where you're supposed to feel good all the time. And I'm kind of shocked that people think that, but I have actually a lot of runners that think that. Running is not something we do because we feel good doing it. There are some runs that we feel great and we're like, yes, and this is why we do it.
Why we keep doing it.
But that's not the majority. I think running teaches us so much more about everything else in life and than feeling good. And I always tell people, if you hate getting out there and running every day, find a different hobby. Like there's a different hobby for you. I feel like you're doing it for the wrong reasons. You're doing it because everybody else is doing or whatever, but there are plenty of hobbies that are really fun. And even in your hobby, even if you switch hobbies, anything that you work hard at is going to have hard days. Like it just is. And there are a lot of hard days in the summer in Florida. There just are. So you really have to love what you're doing.
Right.
And it's not necessarily that you love that you're doing it while you're doing it. It might be like, after you're done, you're like, oh, I can't believe I did that. Or, oh gosh, that's, last night I slept horribly. And I've made a commitment, my husband and I made a commitment to each other that no matter what we do when we wake up in the morning, we get some kind of physical activity before we start our day.
Nice.
So we just went for a walk today.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah.
Tomorrow I'll run. I'll go back to running. But people get so rigid and they think, I have to do this, I have to do that. Or my schedule says I got to run 40 minutes and my schedule says I got to run 50 minutes. And I have started as a coach being like 40 to 50 because people can have some choice in that. And I like that. But
give us some choices. I found it interesting that you said, people think it's fun, or people think that that it makes you feel that running is always going to make you feel good. It's you watch that pendulum swing, before you're a runner, when you've never run or you talk to your friends who don't run, they think running is terrible. It feels bad all the time. So you do go from thinking that that feels bad all the time to thinking that it should feel good all the time. And really it's somewhere in the middle of that, because runners think, like you said, think that it should feel good all the time. People who don't run think it never feels good, but really it's somewhere in the middle all the time.
Somewhere in between.
Yeah.
Well, and I always think you got to equate it. It's like, I'm a musician. So when I was in music school, we did hours and hours of singing and watching our throat. It's the same. It's a different muscle. We got to train it the same way we train running. Oh. Watching my mouth shape.
Uh-oh.
What happened?
Let's see. I think I lost you. I can hear you. There you go.
There I am.
Yep.
I think I would watch my mouth shape and I would watch my tongue shape, and while I was singing, and it got to the point where I was like, I don't love this. This is not fun for me. This is not how I want to spend my life. It's taking away the fun of my hobby. And so I switched hobbies. There are sometimes you have to switch hobbies. I'm never going to advocate for that because I think you can work through anything as a runner, but there are some times that you have to evaluate your life and what your goals are and think to yourself, maybe it's not quitting running. Maybe it's, I just want to work on my 5K for a while.
Right.
I would like to do something that's shorter distance, or like me right now, I'm working on building muscle and building some strength so that when I get back to running, I can be a little stronger. Maybe that's your goal. Or maybe your goal is weight loss and you need to back off on your running, and I'm going to back off on my running and I'm going to focus on my nutrition and my sleep for a little while until that goal-oriented mindset comes back where you're like, oh, I'm itching for a marathon again. Yeah. That's okay. It's okay to switch your goals like that. It's not necessarily, I do think if you look at your yearly goal, you probably don't want to pivot until you finish and you actually reach your goal. Even if it's not the goal that you wanted, you're going to feel better about yourself if you follow it through. Like if you had a marathon in the fall and you were really like, oh, I don't want to do this. This is so horrible. I'm never going to do this again. Even if you say I'm never doing this again, I feel like that was you when you were like training for your first fall marathon. Yeah. You're like, you know what? This is not really my jam.
Yeah.
But you followed it through.
I did.
And you did the race.
And I had a great race.
We learned something about it,
yeah.
right? And we learned, okay, maybe this is not Leigh's cup of tea, and we'll figure out, now we'll transition. But if you had quit and been like, I don't really like this, I don't want to do this, you really wouldn't have reaped the benefits of the lesson that you were supposed to learn.
Yeah. And well, I'm not one to really ever give up on too much. So I think that the struggle was important to me, because it was like, okay, let me just, knowing that there was an end point, that, okay, all I have to do is get to October and I can get this checked off my list, and then I can go back to my spring marathons, or I can go back to, but so it helped to know that, like, I might not ever do this again. So let me just get to this. Let me just get to this, finish this off. And then, hey, I did learn. I learned a
checked
good
off experience.
Yes, I did a good self-evaluation about that.
And goals don't have to be race related. I think that's the thing we get caught up in a lot of times as runners. We think we have to have these big races and we have to have these big goals. But one of my runners right now, she just completed a marathon, and she's had a history of running many marathons and really decent marathons. And she's just in a season where she's coming back from being really burned out in the marathon. She was really burned out. And now her goal is only consistency. I just want to be able to follow a consistent schedule again and enjoy my runs. And she had a great summer training cycle because she's just been really, and so she didn't really care about the outcome of her race. It was just, I want to have a good training cycle. I want to feel good about my training and be confident again without feeling that nasty burnout feeling that I never want to feel again. Mm-hmm. And that's a great goal to have.
Great goal.
There's just so many goals that don't have to be, time centered. And I would even argue that the people that are the most time centered are the ones that don't stick with it long term, because it's not, of course, we all want to get better and we all want to get stronger, but you have to love the process in order to do that, because it just takes years. It's not something that is going to come to you overnight. So in the interim, while you're waiting on those race times to come, find some smaller goals that you really, maybe I want to learn to tempo some races, and I want to learn to be disciplined enough to not go all out in a race. Or maybe I'd like to race a race distance I've never raced before and see how I do in it. Or maybe I'd like to not race at all this season and be a cheerleader and just recreationally run and not do any races. That doesn't make you any less of a runner to have different goals than,
And as they say, absence makes the heart grow fonder. So you're out there cheering. Eventually, your heart goes, well, I'm ready to get back out there. So don't, give yourself that time sometimes to the absence so that it does make it more exciting when you go back out there.
Yeah. And I hate to say this because a lot of people think this is invalidating, and it's not meant to be invalidating, but as runners, we have a very high injury rate. And when you're injured, there's nothing worse to a runner than not being able to run. And it feels horrible. So if you are one of those people that just doesn't want to get out and run and is finding themselves complaining, maybe you need to take some time off and reevaluate your perspective, because if you're able to run and you've been running a long time and you haven't had an injury, that's kind of a superpower, because we're all going to get injured at some point, whether you're doing things right or wrong. It's just a very high injury rate sport. So we need to really be grateful for the time we can be out there. And sometimes that can help us keep our perspective in the right place. Because I can guarantee you, while you're complaining about the summer weather, there are a bunch of people out there that are really wishing they could run more than anything in the world, or running without pain.
Right.
So
you have your coach,
not invalidating, but just perspective.
And your coach's drill, I'm going to be interested. So Coach Maria gets 1 minute. We give her 30 minutes in the show, but 1 full minute to talk about one specific thing. So today's coach's drill is plan ahead.
Yes. I love planning ahead, and so many of us don't do it. And when I mean plan ahead, I really want you guys to zoom out 1 year, zoom out 2 years, zoom out 3 years, zoom out 5 years. Come up with goals that are 5-year goals, 4-year goals, 3-year goals, 2-year olds, and then stick to the ones that are closest to you and watch how those goals will just come to you. Instead of, I see a lot of people either not doing that at all, like not zooming out at all, and just focusing on the next race and the next race, or people that come up with a goal that's like, I want to qualify for Boston, and they don't realize it's going to take 5 to 10 years to do that. And when they don't do it after 3 months, they get annoyed and quit. And we need to plan ahead and be able to pivot when those plans don't necessarily go our way.
Yeah, because I think that's what makes people, or at least I'll say, when I say people, I'm speaking of me, that when you make that 5-year goal, that's vulnerable. It's scary because it's like there are a lot of things between me now and me 5 years from now. Like, what if I don't hit that goal? And so you're saying it's okay because you can learn to pivot to find where you need to be. But to me, making that 5-year race goal, like, who knows where I'll be? So it's harder for me to make that in life for me.
Yeah. And I think, I'll give a shout out to my brother on this one, because he did this thing with his son that I thought was so great. His son was really trying hard to be on the football team. He really had worked really, really hard to get on the middle school varsity team. And he was really focused on that tryout. And my brother said, take the time every night to look back at all the things that you did to get you to this goal. Write them down and then re-look at them every day until you get to that race day. You can have all of these things will help you build confidence for your tryout. And even if tryouts don't go the way that you want them to go, you can see all of the things that you did to help you get there. And that builds your confidence. We need to have small wins. And in the summer, because we don't have the small wins of being able to hit the paces we need to hit, we need to develop small wins. Like, I can't believe I got out there. Most people wouldn't get out there in this dew point. I can't believe I made it this far. I can't believe I nailed my nutrition this time. I nailed my sleep this time. I didn't get any cramps this time. It might be so little, but try to focus on those goals and write them down so that when you get to race day, you can look back and say, oh, look at all these things I did well.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking, oh my gosh, I did this bad and I did this bad and I couldn't hit this pace and I couldn't hit this pace. And then you're jacking your confidence.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think this is a great thing because you would ask even on your on our On Track social, like, what are some ways to get through September, knowing that your brain thinks it's supposed to cool down, it does not. So these are some great ways.
And on social media is all pumping out the pumpkin spice lattes and all that stuff, so and you're feeling like, dang, everybody else is getting in fall and school's starting, and you're seeing all the fall trees, and you're just like, nah, it's just going to another kind of summer in Florida.
Right. It barely transitions, at least in the next month. So these are some great tools and people can put in their toolbox and on over the next month and a half, and then know that what you're doing is hard and that you'll reap the benefits of it going forward.
And also remember that in a few months, these people up north are going to be whining about snow and it's too cold to get out there and run. And we're going to be in this glorious weather because Florida really does. We have such nice weather from the end of October till May, really. I mean, it is just absolutely gorgeous. So we're about to go into the best season. So just hang tight, guys. You can do it one more month. You've almost made it. And it wouldn't feel as good if we didn't have to go through this.
Right. Yes, that's why even in California, where your client said they went out and said, I'm going to leave here for forever. Well, guess what? They have times when it doesn't feel that same, it doesn't feel that great. So
I know it is kind of not that much in California, I feel like, but
they do keep it low humidity, but there are super, super hot days, and there's Santa Ana winds, and there's fryers,
and they have hills. They have a lot of hills that we don't have.
Yes, so there's nowhere is perfect. So you just adjust along the way. So, all right, Coach.
Yep. Happy adjusting, guys. You've almost made it.
So close. 1 month, and this is some great ways people can get through. Know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and make these fall races.
Yeah, let's go fall.
Let's go. All right, see y'all later.
All right, bye.